Most careers look clean from the outside. The promotions, titles, the wins. But what about the costs? The doubts, the mistakes, the undernourished parts of yourself, your relationships, and your life? How do you turn those lessons into leverage? How do you learn from those who've been there, done that, to accelerate your own journey and impact? This week, Deb Smallwood joins us, a 40-year veteran of technology, strategy, and insurance, and author of SelfPowerment, The Inner Shift for High-Achieving Women. Drawing on decades of career wisdom and groundbreaking research with over 52 senior women and 10 male executives, Deb unpacks the silent struggles, the self-doubt, and the moment she stopped asking for permission and started owning her power. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Let's connect the dots. Welcome to this week's episode of Connecting the Dots. I have a very special guest, Deb Smallwood, and a cameo co-host, Grace McNamara, back with us. So let's get started with connecting your dots, Deb. So you've had a 40-plus year career at the very top of technology, of strategy, and of insurance. Can you take us back to the beginning? Because your journey is a really remarkable one, from Liberty Mutual to founding SelfPowerment. Connect the dots.
Well, hello, ladies, and hello to everyone. I love the connecting the dots, the way you phrase that, right? I need to set some context. My mother divorced my father in 1959, where no one got divorced. And she was a first-generation American, Greek immigrants, and an extremely hard worker. And her whole life was never be dependent on a man, work hard, be financially independent. And then the other piece of her advice was, this computer thing's going to be really big, and work for a company that has benefits and has retirement. So it was always, so that was the foundation of growing up. And she was an incredibly strong woman. So I was a born leader, always leading, first woman president in my high school class. And then when I had an opportunity to join Liberty Mutual in 1978, long time ago, right? That's when main computers and mainframes were just rolling out into the industry, and they had a programming program. So fast forward 19 years, 13 promotions. I hit the market. I hit technology right when it was exploding, right? And took advantage of that. But I started to feel the glass ceiling. So many promotions, but you reach a certain level and you feel that glass ceiling, and I moved on. And I always wanted to be a consultant. And my attitude is, why not me? Why not look up and out and see the infinite possibilities? And when you're ready, you see it and you jump. Like, take a leap, the net will appear. And so I became a consultant at KPMG and made partner in 18 months. And then September 11th hit. And I worked in the financial district in New York City, and there was a massive layoff. And so I had to reset myself, ground myself. But I remember seeing thought leaders and experts for the insurance and technology world at a Gartner conference. And I said, why not me? And I said, I want to be that. And I became a thought leader in the insurance industry. And so I didn't know I was doing it at the time, and most of us don't, but we're building this set of experience and talent and skill in insurance and technology and strategy and transformation, and then a thought leader. And so I knew how to be a consultant. And then one day when I had real great clarity, part of my own personal journey, I looked up and said, it's time for me to start my own business. So for 15 years, I ran my own advisory company, research company with two business partners for 15 years, called Strategy Meets Action. And then I sold it in 2020, which was always the plan, to a venture capital backed global company. And then I took a step back and said, well, I always wanted to write a book. Why not write a book about women empowerment? When I started to think about my journey and my successes, but yet my struggles and my pain, why not provide some insights to women and turn it into more, why not us? That was a lot of information. but hopefully it sets some context.
Does, and I love it. Deb, thank you so much, because I appreciate we connected through the Women in Insurance Network. And likewise, when you dropped in around the book, I was eager to connect. And it is an amazing journey that you've been on. I also love the backstory of just, there's always an influencer right in the background. So your mom being, a powerhouse woman, good advice right from a young age, and you carrying it through your entire career. And it's pretty impressive. But the book as well has gone live. So congratulations. The book is live and it is going well. I have my download. I am ready to start reading, to get into it. So I'm looking forward to that. One thing I want to pick up on is obviously the word empowerment. Jen, we've talked about this before on the podcast as well. Deb, I would love you to share your thoughts on empowerment, and why the book is Powerment and Self-Powerment, because I think this is always an interesting space. And there's lots of ways that these words are used interchangeably, but they're not that interchangeably, I would think. What's your thoughts, Deb?
Yeah, it's a fascinating word. And I'm still sometimes when I'm introduced, people just immediately put empowerment, self-empowerment. Empowerment is someone giving you permission, someone giving you making choices and empowering you to do something. So you may empower an employee to take on a project. They may, like with a promotion, you're empowered. Self-powerment is you not looking for anyone else, but you taking power yourself for yourself and not asking anyone permission for that. So I believe that we all have this incredible power, this inner power, both physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, that when we combine those, we become a force and be able to do things that we're
Otherwise
able.
impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Seizing the moment of infinite possibilities. And my career is, a very high level filtered of my career. But whatever you want to do, whatever you desire and what you're deserving of, you can achieve.
It's really important. If we stop the podcast there, I think that little clip is already like powerful, because to your point of, we talk about these data points, some of these words interchangeably, but they're so not. So I love it. I love the fact that you've named it Powerment, Self-Powerment, created a new word as well, which is, I know Jen also loves.
Yeah, I mean, empowerment. So my takeaway was empowerment is from the outside in, and empowerment is from the inside out. And that is a resource that is nurtured and fostered by you to you.
I love that. I'd love to use that. Thank you.
It's yours. It's yours.
So Deb, tell us about the book then, because the process behind creating this book. You didn't just sit down and ultimately write a book from the heart. You went around this in a very methodical, logical way. So talk us through the process first, because I think that's a really important piece to why everyone should read this.
Well, I always wanted to write a book. And what I've always been able to do is I know my strengths, I know my superpowers, but I know my gaps. And I knew that I needed to hire a coach. And I knew upfront I needed to hire a publisher. I needed to secure those. I wasn't going to just go off on and start writing and not knowing if it was ever going to be published. And I knew that self-publishing was not an option. So I happened to run into someone in 2019 that I knew her husband, and I knew that she was a coach and a publisher for a hybrid. So I kept her in the back of my mind. And I approached her after I sold the business and worked out my non-compete and my commitments from the sale. So I ended up hiring Karen as a coach, and it ended up being a 3-year journey. I had never written a book before. I owned a company that owned and produced research, syndicated research. So I knew how to write research. I knew how to conduct research. I knew how to be a strategic advisor. I knew how to advise companies on strategies, transformation, and I knew how to execute. So we went on this journey, and I knew that I wanted to do research. I had my story, but I started to look at a couple of different dimensions. I looked at the unfiltered story of me. Someone said to me, you really have to look at your unfiltered story. And I believe everyone should take a pen and start writing your unfiltered story, because I introduced myself as a filter. Our resumes, our LinkedIn profiles are all filtered. And I started to wonder after I wrote my unfiltered stories, what do other women's unfiltered stories look like?
What does unfiltered mean to you? What does that mean you're adding in?
The pain, the suffering, the dips. We highlight the highs. I got promoted. I'm this level. I've achieved this. But it's really the unfiltered, which are the dips, the pain, the not getting the promotion, feeling the glass ceiling, being discriminated against, failed
Messy.
projects, the messies,
Yeah.
right? And
The vast majority.
and what happens is you come out of those. Most people come out of them. Some people don't, but most people come out of them. And so I really wanted to hone in how I knew how I came out of them, which ended up becoming the framework for self-powerment. But I wanted to see other women executives, their experiences. And so I knew that I needed to talk to women. So I started with, I'm going to interview 8 women, 8 senior women. I figured 8 to 12 would be a really good sampling. And they were open-ended questions. And I really wanted to understand their experiences because I went in assuming that life was easier, that careers were easier, that they were linear, that discrimination had gone away and sexual harassment, that it wasn't as bad because women had rise. So I made these really powerful hypotheses and assumptions. And I really wanted to understand how women, CEOs, made it to the C-level suites, how these women made it, and what was their experience. And I was shocked what I found. And I ended up interviewing 52 women that it's more complex than just the stats of how many women are C executives. It's more complex than just their story or their strategies. That all my predictions were really proven wrong, that it is not easier. It's just as hard, but different. And I saw in women this silent struggle, this unfiltered story that we never hear, and that women think that it's just them, and that women need to tell their story. And that when I took a step back, although every woman's story was unique and different, and their struggles and their pain were different, there were these common themes that emerged. And so my research became this incredible wealth of information and insights. It also helped me realize that things that I was told and my experiences in the 90s were still happening to women in the 2024, 2025. It just blew me away. I was just, it took a few months, and then it took time for me to just sit back and be with the information. It was quite profound and quite powerful.
Can I ask you why you thought it went away? Why was your hypothesis that it was better? Just curious.
Besides being an optimist,
Because we were talking about it. We weren't talking about it. So go back to the 1980s. There were no women in any offices, right? And we were all like fighting, and I could feel the glass ceiling in the 80s and the 90s. But from then, the last 25 years, women have broken through the glass ceilings, right? Women have demonstrated excellence in every single C-level role in every single industry. And so I thought, well, maybe it's just easier, right? And maybe some of the discrimination, the biases, because of different generations coming in, I really
yeah,
thought it was going to be easier.
it's a logical step. And I think you're right. We talk about it more. In some way, I'm actually of the same opinion. I'm like, it has to have gotten easier in the last 30 years, right? So yeah. So what's your research? What's the research tell you? Because it sounds like you were kind of your assumption and the reality did not align.
Right. That discrimination and the stories I heard about sexual harassment in the workplace in the United States made my head spin, broke my heart. that discrimination is a little more subtle. So in the 90s and early 2000, there weren't postings, there weren't job postings. They just brought people in. So they just brought leaders in or groups of their friends, right? So they just brought people in and you didn't have an opportunity. Now you have an opportunity to post. But now we're told you're not ready, you're not strategic, you're the wrong fit.
Not
And
likable.
to me, that's subtle. That's subtle, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can apply, but then there's still the numbers are dismal. The amount of C-level and women leaders is dismal. I also reference in my book the McKinsey Lean In org
Research. Yeah.
workplace report that they've been publishing for now. The 11th just came out at the end of last year. So when I was writing the book in the 2024 report said gender parity in 50 years. And I said to myself, my granddaughters are going to be retiring in 50 years. So that's unacceptable. And this last report came out because the numbers are dropping. And they said, maybe there's an ambition gap. And there's, based on my research, there's no ambition gap. Women are exhausted. Women are tired. And what is different today than it was in the 1980s and 90s and early 2000s, we have choice today. We have options, right? Look at your organization and as fractional executives, as self-employed women in a collaborative environment. That wasn't available 25 years ago, right? So we have options to become part of different organizations and just have different types of roles that we didn't have. So I think women are finally waking up and saying, yeah, enough. I'm moving on.
Jen, you've talked about this before as well as creating different structures, right? I think you've done the same, right? We've all stepped out of big organizations and said, what do I actually want? What's the values, the principles, the structure that works for me, physically as well as mentally? And then, as you say, Deb, I think you're spot on. Some women that I know have created a different structure, one that's working for them in their lives with all that's going on. Yeah, I mean, I'm also conscious that just this week we talked about the exhaustion of women listening to another platform that's degrading, ultimately objectifying women, where we have talking about rape ultimately on a platform and 82 million men logged in 1 month, which was 20 million up from the previous month. So it's an exhausting time to be a woman. And that's not even being in the weeds of it.
And this is like all behind the screen of, all of the work that we've done for women's rights, all of the advocacy that we've done, like within the working world and outside of the working world. It's like there's this undercurrent that is creating a bit of a tug of war that's, I think you nailed it. Like it's dismal, that it's very frustrating. And I also think, when you've worked for a large corporation, there's so much compromise that goes into that. There's no way that you get to show up and express your values in most major corporations. So if you have existed in that environment, you're used to kind of like this eroding compromise of your value and of your talent for so long that for me anyway, when there was an opportunity to step out and have the flexibility to work on my terms, I took that and started sprinting.
Deb, in the book you introduced or you interviewed men as well for the book, Complement of Men and Male Leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the difference, or what was the feedback from that side of the table?
Yeah, so I'm glad I spoke to 10 men. Now they were all executives, either CIOs, CEOs, partners with venture capital firms, very successful men. They approach their lives and their careers differently. I didn't see the silent suffering or the silent stories, the pain. Either they're not feeling them or they don't share. I also believe that men and women are just different. there's all kinds of studies. There's biologically, DNA, culturally, unbiased. I mean, the bias, it could be cultural, it could be family norms, it could be any of those. But men and women are just differently. And I feel that they don't manifest the noise that women have in their head, the self-doubt. The one thing I did see, women all have varying levels of self-doubt. And it varies the level of confidence. So we're talking varying levels of self-doubt. And I didn't see any of that with the men. And so men typically don't have imposter syndrome, where I saw highly successful women with that imposter syndrome. So I didn't see anything like that. I also saw in the interviews, and I heard this, and I didn't see it with just the 10 men. It's that proving, that performing, that grinding, and always overperforming, always over preparing. Didn't see that in the men. And I didn't ask specific questions like that. I asked the same questions. Tell me a little about your achievement. Like, I asked a question, how was your career? Was it easy or hard? And they all said hard. I didn't get that from all the men. And what I also realized, that when women don't get promotions, they take a step back and they immediately think it's them. You're not prepared, you're not ready, you're not strategic. And so they go
You're not
internal.
enough.
You're
Yeah.
not enough. You're not enough. Men here, they don't get a promotion. I have multiple men tell me about they didn't get an enterprise role or something. They network for their careers. They pick up the phone and they move on and they go and they get that role, where women take a step back, which feeds into that invisible cycle, right? That invisible cycle that I started to uncover as I looked at this research, that women stay put. And part of it is the self-doubt. So men and women just really differently. I do believe, and ladies would agree, that the system, corporate America, is designed by men for men, right? It
Corporate,
was
global.
global,
Global.
right? Yeah. That job descriptions for CEOs were designed 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that have evolved. But everything has stemmed from a workplace that was designed by men for men. So here we are, women, and we just don't fit in the system. The criteria, the job descriptions, everything. And so we're constantly proving, we're constantly overperforming, and we get that manifestation of that self-doubt or that imposter syndrome.
And I think, like, we've talked about this in the podcast in many episodes, Grace, you certainly have. Women's leadership approach is so much different, and it's not valued in the same way as the traditional masculine alpha leadership style. And that style is not necessarily effective. It's just normal, and it's been celebrated, it's been popularized. And when women show up with a softer, more empathetic, more communicative leadership style, they're
Mhm.
actually shut down and pegged as like not hard enough, or not aggressive enough, or not effective enough. And I think, like, that's, and it still perpetuates, like, that bias is still there. I see it playing every day.
This is one of the reasons why I was so excited about Deb and your book, because like I think it's like 80% of self-empowerment and self-improvement books are read by women. But the vast majority are male writers. And I've read loads of them. You ladies have as well. And you're like, it's just
Yeah,
different, right?
this
You
is
said
not
we
it.
are different. We think different. We operate different. We show up different. Our way of collaborating is different, and our way of leading is quite different as well. So yeah, I'm excited that Deb, you've written the book and done it in such a clinical, prosaic way as well, to get information from both sides in a way it's a big audience that you've talked to as well. So yeah, well done on going through the detail and the time and the effort and the passion. And I've no doubt you had some really passionate moments, as well as angry moments, as well as disappointing moments. I'm sure there was all the emotional roller coaster as part of those interviews, not just dealing with your own, going from the corporate world into an author, but the hearing all those stories, because it is quite an emotional emotional space. I'm interested to hear your ladies' thoughts. And I think we generally haven't talked about it yet either. Obviously, International Women's Day was recently, and the tagline was "Give to gain," I think it was. And it's like, this is terrible. We don't need, going back to Deb's point, we don't need to tell women again to do something for somebody else. Women do that by default. And as you say, will take a rejection and go, right, I'm just going a different angle. I'm just going to pick up the phone and go a different route and possibly aim higher. And I think I've absolutely seen the opposite of Deb, what you were saying, is where you get a knock and I'm just going to take a moment here to reflect and go, what can I do different? What can I do better? Which just takes time. And as you say, then you get stuck in that one space.
You do. And you have to, that's when you get clarity about who you are and your strengths and what you want. And you look at that rejection and you say, do I fit here? And it's flipping the conversation from will they choose me to do I choose this?
I love
That
that.
is
I
self-power.
read that in one of your posts.
That is self-powerment to really, that's that inner shift, right? Because the book, the subtitle is The Inner Shift for High Achieving Women Who Want More Than Just Success. Because so many women have reached various titles and success and salaries and bonuses and plans and roles. And I was there as a partner, right? And you're exhausted. You're not taking care of yourself. You've lost yourself in the role, in your identity. And then when it's taken away from you, you're lost, right? And so it's really coming back to that internal, like your definition of self-powerment, that internal power that we have.
Deb, is there some punchlines or taglines from the book that you're able to share? Appreciate that we all are going to go out and read it and get into the weeds of all the
Tease
lessons
us.
and the
Tease us.
frameworks. But tease us, yeah. What are the main things that we can tease the audience with so that they do the same?
Some of the teasers are around your power comes from who you are, not what you do. You are not your title. Let's see. I love the Maya Angelou, you alone is enough. And the Eckhart Tolle, no one else can live your life. Only you can do it. And so when you start to see words of wisdom like that, and then you start to look at the self-powerment framework, when you look at the framework, in the center is the I am.
Mhm.
The aha that I had in my career about 25 years ago, which really created the confidence and the clarity and the choice to start my own business was we're human beings doing. And what we end up losing is that being, that that inner stillness, our conscious, our light. And because it's all that those years of proving and that external validation and not getting it and the layers of self-doubt, right? But when you can bring clarity to all of that and go and find your being, the space between your breath, or the space between your heart, and when you bring the human being in the present moment to the doing, you realize that the doing is not your identity. It's just something that you either love to do or have to do, right? That's the beauty and the power of the book.
Yes.
You said something about defining success, and I think that's been like my aha moment in my midlife was having to unbundle my whole identity with my career. And
Yeah.
I think that's hustle culture, right? Like hustle culture says you are your title. And I think a lot of us, including me, buy in like hook, line, and sinker. But, you get caught in the slipstream of career and life. And I had family in there as well. And then you look up at some point, and for me, that point was like an exit, a big exit from an organization, and I was broken. I didn't know myself anymore. I didn't have any other, like, I couldn't tell you what I liked or what I wanted or who I was. And I feel like there's so many people in that space who can't tell you who I am. And I love that that's your center for your framework because it's that definition and the work that goes into that definition. And that definition is dynamic. I mean, how much have you changed in the past 10 years? Like, we're constantly changing. So I think that that's so beautiful that is the core.
You understand it completely. It's almost like you read the book. We're so aligned, right? If you look into a baby's eyes, that unconditional love, that unconditional being, that joy, that peace, and then our whole life we go to school and things aren't right and we're competing. And when we get our first job in corporate, and it happened to me, 13 promotions in 19 years, the pushing, the grinding, and you have to prove yourself, right? That never stops. It just doesn't stop. And so women get caught in this cycle of that constant proving, getting more projects, getting the big, ugly, hairy projects, the core system replacements, the strategies. I've walked into hundreds of companies, and there's always a handful of women that are running the operations for insurance, getting the policies out, getting the claims out. They tend to be women, and they're all managing the transformation efforts, right? So, and then they're told they're not strategic because they're operational, but they're getting the stuff done. They're actually implementing the strategic, still proving and grinding. And what happens is they're getting bonuses, right? And they get caught in that, but they've lost their identity that you had talked about. And it's going back to, are you happy? Are you at ease? Is it a grind? Are you exhausted? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you nurturing yourself? Can you pause for just a moment, take a breath? Or is it that constant proving and pushing and looking around? So self-empowerment brings you back to the human being, knowing your superpowers, taking care of yourself, knowing, loving, accepting who you are, being able to quiet that noise, that self-doubt in our head and all that crazy noise taking us out of the present moment and making bold choices for ourselves, accepting what is and making bold choices. Because at the end of the day, we all have the choice. You made the choice in corporate America. I made the choice to start my own business. They're bold choices, but it's when you know inside, this is the choice I'm going to make and it's right for me.
And I think what's really cool is when you do make a choice for yourself and it's for you from you, and you're like, am I going to work as hard for myself as I did for everybody else? And then you're unstoppable. Like,
Right.
then you've got the reins.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And surrounding yourself with like-minded people, getting rid of the system, not having that system that you have to navigate in the politics and the good old boy network, which really drains a lot of us.
That's a really important point. And Jen, we talk about this all the time. Deb is around that network. And obviously, we met through a women in insurance network. Jen and me met through the fitness industry. And we have another network as well. And I think you said it exactly, that men network differently. Like they're very intentional. They're very upfront of, I want ABC. I'm going to go find, ABC person that's going to be able to help me do that. Women, I think, are just still conservative in relation to reaching out to that network, being clear on what they want, and then I have the capacity, the knowledge, the experience, the background in order to achieve it. So yeah, I think the book is going to be fantastically powerful for lots of people who are just not right there yet. As I said,
Just
have the
need a nudge.
experience, keep
Yeah.
proving themselves, but still need to actually get it done. So Deb, remind us, where is the book? How do we make sure everyone is downloading it, buying it, reading it in the next couple of weeks?
Before we go there, I want to go back to the networking because I think it's really important. Women network initially for emotional support first. And so a lot of the communities out there are emotional support, maybe a little career support. Women tend not to ask for help. How many times in your career have you asked for help, right? You feel like you have to prove it and do it yourself. I was just on a mentoring call, an executive mentoring call yesterday, and this woman's not asking for help. So you've got to ask for help. It's okay. And the women, when I asked women what would they change or what would they do differently, the majority of them said, I would ask for help earlier and sooner. Men ask for help. Men network for their careers and they surround themselves. It's very easy for a male CIO to call another male or female CIO and ask what they think about that technology or their experience. Women tend not to do that. So it's a whole different paradigm. I think we have to ask for help and that we need to create an internal external networking system. And there's a whole section in the book about intentional connections as well.
That's definitely a chapter I will be calling out to my network for sure.
There's two sides to that. It's funny because I just had a conversation with a psychotherapist about women asking for help, and like the case for slowing down was her topic and area of expertise and pointing to her book. But the thing that she said was the other side of asking for help is receiving help. Are we able to receive help when it's given? And I think that's another thing that we have a hard time with. Almost as hard as asking for help is actually taking it when it's given. And it's both sides of that book that we need to do work on, because people love helping, actually, and we need to get better at receiving what's offered.
I love that, right? And women helping women, because there's still women aren't helping women. And we just need to emphasize that a little more. I do want to point out that the book isn't about changing who you are. It's really rediscovering who you are. And it's also not quitting your corporate job, because what we're talking about is not everywhere and it's not every woman, right? There are some really amazing companies and some amazing roles that women are flourishing and highly successful and are having great careers. There's some really great bosses out there. And so when we talk about the system, it's not everywhere. And even if you are caught in that and you're unhappy and you didn't get the job, the choice is not always about leaving. It's about accepting what is and then making a choice. And in some cases, staying might be the best option. It might be that you love the company, love the team, you love what you're doing. Maybe it's not the right fit for you, but you accept it and you let go of it. You don't sit on the fence miserable. You sort of just become it, right? And you just accept it, or you move on. And when I was interviewing women, I left Liberty Mutual because I felt the glass ceiling and they brought in someone over me instead of giving me the opportunity. And I was told in 1997 I wasn't strategic. And I heard the same thing in 2024 for women that were trying, right? I chose to leave. That was a decision I made, and I did want to become a consultant. I spoke with another woman that the same thing happened in IT at an insurance company, and she was angry as well. She actually applied for the job because it was 20 years later. She applied for the job and was told she wasn't strategic. And she decided to stay because she loved the company. She loved the team. It just fit into her lifestyle. So she walked into the new boss's office and said, "I am so angry you're here, and I know it's not your fault, but I love this company. I love the team. I love what we do, and I'm going to help you be successful. But this is the role I want. This is what I want to do, and this is the value I can bring." And he went, "Great." And he ended up promoting her and changing her role. So those are two different paths, but that's self-powerment, right? Making the choice and asking for things, and then moving on. And she ended up retiring 10 years later.
Love it. I love those stories. And I've been very lucky in my career in many ways. I said I worked in corporate for many years. I loved it and I had great bosses. And like that, I chose to continue on that career path and push, push, push. And I love it. That's so, but to your point, more women that I talk to haven't had that experience. So there's definitely not everywhere, but it's enough places that we should talk about it and we should take action and be aware of it and supportive. And I'm looking forward to that chapter on the intentional networking. So where can we get the book, Deb? Where do we make sure our listeners can go to download it, buy it, and make sure they're getting the tips?
Yeah. So the book is available at every retailer, not necessarily in every bookstore. We're hoping to run a pilot in Barnes & Noble. It looks like they're going to be running a pilot, unclear where. But you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Bookshop, Target, Walmart. It's available everywhere. And you can either go directly to those sites. So you could go to selfpowerment.com. We have it right there on our website with all the different links. We have complimentary workbooks that are available once you buy the book. Also, there's some links floating around out there for free ebooks because I believe that I need to get the book into as many women's hands because that's gonna create the momentum and the change because I believe that the system's not going to change. Lord knows I want to change the world, right? And I believe we have to change it from ourselves and be the change we want to see and be in the world. And so the more women that can get this book and start to realize the power that they have, the world can be a better place.
Inside
I
out.
love it. And Deb, last question that we always ask on the podcast is around spotlighting and highlighting other women in our network. We've talked about this before. Visibility of women usually isn't as high as it is for men. And you've talked about this during the podcast as well. So spotlight one or two women furries. Who should we be talking to? Who should we be following? Who should potentially be future guests on the podcast?
I love Gina Hardy, who is the CEO of North Carolina JUA. She's the CEO of a billion-dollar insurance company. And I met her in a retreat that we both went to. I was able to I ran workshops and participated in some retreats, and I started to share my unfiltered story, and she was there and provided some really great insights and wisdom. But what I love about Gina is she is self-powered. She has an all-male board. She is so mindful of her employees that she believes in self-care, self-investments. She has a really high spend, different spend and probably a higher spend than most insurance companies. Like, she offered the book to her staff. She brings in wellness coaches. She brings in sleep experts. She brings in health and food wisdom to her team. She believes in a healthy environment and a healthy team. So she's incredible, and has been extremely supportive. And so I think she's a role model of being a leader in introducing wellness into her organization. She might be appropriate as a speaker. And then the other woman is Marissa Buckley, who's been on the journey with me. So back in 2024, she ran the retreat because she sensed that women were burning out. And it was a group of women that I had never gone on a retreat. Lord knows with women I don't know, 20 women in this big house we call it Zen in Zion. And so she actually sparked my journey, and she is now reinventing herself in helping founders, especially women founders in software, really be able to understand themselves and market themselves out there. And I've watched her journey, and the two of us have been on this journey together. And so she's another shout out as well.
One
I
woman.
love those two.
Absolutely.
And this is the beauty. I think this is always a nice part of the podcast is that we do get the opportunity to shout out other women who typically wouldn't, or just we don't all know, because again, we're all got big networks, but never big enough. And always good to see women that are succeeding and doing well and bringing other people with them as well. I mean, the all male board is a whole other conversation because to your point, that's certainly not an open invitation right now. It's definitely the same model it used to be of bringing in, the nepotism is high, and guys you golf with are definitely high for the board.
I knew you were going to say golf. I'm like, if you don't talk about golf and boards in the same sentence, you're not having a conversation.
Exactly. So yeah, and actually I love this, Jen. You must kind of add this on to our conversations, but along with connecting the dots with that unfiltered truth. Because I think actually it's a really great connection there. Because to Deb's point exactly, everything we do right now in the public face is filtered in some shape or form. Everything, because it's very much around celebrating what we've done well or where we succeeded, and versus the lessons that we've learned and the hard truths on the journey. So Deb, thank you so
Those are the
much.
most valuable. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ladies. I love your wisdom. I love what you're doing. We're so aligned, right? And it's great to be on the other side, right? To have the clarity that we have about what is true and not get caught up in it or let it really eat away at us, and just believe in ourselves and pause and take a deep breath and in, because life is short, careers are short. and you have to enjoy the moment. It's all about bringing ease and joy back to yourself. So when you're doing that human being doing, you're with peace and joy and happiness, right?
This mic drop moment there,
I
Jen, I
was,
think.
yes, 100%. That's a beautiful way to end.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks for listening to Connecting the Dots. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, share it with someone who'd enjoy it too. You can find all of our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you follow the show, leave a rating. It helps more people discover our work. Until next time, keep connecting the dots and keep building the future you want to see.